all across the fantasy universe. Welcome, one and all, to the 2-point stance. That's right. Brian Drake, Joe Dolan, fantasypoints.com. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for joining us here on your favorite podcast feed or on YouTube. We really love those YouTube folks who come and hang out with us. Search us on YouTube at Fantasy Points, youtube.com/Fantasy Points.
For joining us here on your favorite.
Joe, we got a great one tonight. And I'm not talking just because every show we do is great and I'm a company man, but we have what I think is one of the best analysts in the industry, the director of analytics for fantasypoints.com, Mr. Graham Barfield, my arch nemesis from the Kings Classic Blended Division. We'll get into that later. But Joe, I'm excited to have Graham on the show today because we're going to kick off best ball season here at fantasypoints.com.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's good to be with Graham. It's good to be with you, Drake. Had some fun talking XFL. Now we're talking real football, at least for your from your perspective, Drake. But hey, I am definitely making some XFL lineups using Jake Turby's. Go listen to the podcast. Oh, here comes Butterscotch. For those of you who see on YouTube, here comes my dog Butterscotch, who she's been dealing with a paw infection, Drake, since Thanksgiving. I think we talked about that. But we're so what's going on here is like we put our initial best ball rankings up. Underdog's got a couple tournaments going, so we need to have rankings up. Graham did an article. Graham's really been digging in, and I'm really interested to get into because Graham's a big tiers guy, not like Eric Clapton, but like tiers, like levels of things, I guess is the way one would say. And that's how I like to really rank my players as well. I think that's the smart way to rank your players. I'm really interested to see if he's noticed any trends. Graham, it's good to be with you, my friend. Thanks for joining us here on the 2-point stance. We've had the rankings out. You've dived into the rankings. You've gone through the ADP. What's going on, man? How's the work been for you?
It's been good. Yeah. It's been good to get back into things. I was just telling Brian I took like 3 days off in the last couple days or a couple weeks. So that's been nice. But no, just diving right back into best ball rankings. Yeah. Little and big board, $10 and $3 contests on Underdog. And just off the top, man, Joe, I don't know if you guys have done any drafts yet, but we're seeing the first 2 rounds like very receiver heavy, which makes a lot of sense. But after you get to round 7, 8, 9, there are a lot of backs with very interesting profiles from the free agents to this rookie class. I think this is a really interesting ADP pocket right now because it feels like to me there's maybe 6 to 7 guys after round 8, 9 that could just blow past their ADP. And then there's another 6 to 7 that could just get blown up by their ADP. So it's you're always taking a risk if you're drafting on March the 2nd, of course. But I think this is a really interesting ADP landscape just because there's so many late round running backs this year.
And Drake, I think from doing Underdog last year, Underdog is wide receiver drunk anyway. Underdog drafters are, which is interesting because Underdog's half PPR. So there's I've done drafts on DraftKings, NFFC, the old best ball 10s, full PPR sites, and they're not as wide receiver drunk as Underdog. And that trend is just exploding this year. The downside is you're well, I'll zig when I zag. The problem is, man, you can really get behind at the wide receiver position if you don't go along with the trend. And it's going to be fascinating to see how people build their teams because Grandma, I think this is going to be a question. Well, Drake, I want to see, I'll get into the tiers because there was a big lesson I learned from last year in Underdog, and we'll get into that. But Drake, are you old school? Are you running back first round type of guy? Are you, I got to get one in the first 2 rounds kind of guy? Have you changed that? Because, man, if you want a running back in the first round, you're going to have your pick of the litter here on Underdog if you're drafting early.
Yeah, I'm looking at the rankings that Graham has up here, and there's 8 wide receivers in our top 12, 3 running backs, and the third of which being Jonathan Taylor, who is at 11 overall, RB3. So, I mean, you can get last year's literally RB1 overall number 1 player at the end of the first round. And I think that's going to creep up as we see, a quarterback land in Indianapolis and things progress through the offseason. But I'm best player available. If that best player is Travis Kelce, I'll take Travis Kelce. I did that last year in a 14-team draft that Graham and I were in together. If I get to the back half of the first round and there's a couple of good, backs there, maybe Austin Eckler falls, I'll take Austin Eckler there. But I think at that top end of the draft, call me crazy, I still love CMC. I think he's just such an advantage weekly when you get him in your lineup. And hey, guess what? He stayed healthy, guys. And, God forbid that happens again. But I love Christian McCaffrey. I have no problem taking him at the 101.
No, I don't think. I think there's going to be a lot of people who don't have a problem doing that. Now, Graham, you obviously were looking at the ADP throughout this, doing drafts and whatnot. Do you think it's too wide receiver drunk right now? Like,
no. I think it's honestly, I think it's perfect, and I think it's one of those things where, like, okay, last year was a historically bad year for late round wide receivers. I mean, name me one that really snatched. Garrett Wilson. I mean, and it really took till week, 9, 10 for him to get around. I mean, a lot of, he probably got dumped in a lot of shallow leagues. I mean, I know I hung on to him in all of mine, but I mean, I think this year it'll balance out a little bit better. But I think we've just gotten better at identifying the top end receivers, and more to the point, we've gotten better at identifying the mid-range receivers too. And right now, as I'm looking across the running back landscape, the one thing I do when I start my rankings, I don't look at ADP. I go from a top-down approach. I start at a team-by-team level, and I go, okay, these are the backs that I feel really, really good about. The top ones are easy. McCaffrey, Eckler. You could put JT in that mix. Once you get past that point, though, this year, guys, it's like, I mean, Ken Walker's fantastic. We love him, but he doesn't have a receiving profile. Bijan Robinson isn't drafted yet, and he's going as a near first-round pick. The running back landscape gets real murky really fast, and it's not just receivers. We're now seeing Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes start going in the back half of the second round, early third round, and I think that just makes sense. Is it different from everything that we've been drafting for the last 5-6 years? Absolutely. I think it's one of those things where people are looking across the running back landscape and just realizing, man, like, it is thin, and it gets thin fast. So who else are we going to draft? I mean, these difference-making quarterbacks and all of the best wide receiver 1s and 2s. I think that's at least in the first couple of rounds, I think that's where everybody's head's at.
Yeah, if you look back at last year, 2022, I'm in full PPR here, but I can switch over to half, which Underdog is, and you look at what guys were scoring at a points per game basis. After you get past Tony Pollard at RB7, you don't have another running back averaging 15 points a game.
Exactly. It's a long, flat tier. It's an extremely long, flat tier. And that's, I mean, my rankings represent that. I mean, if you go down, maybe we can talk a little bit about this rookie class, but, Bijan is obviously at the top. Jahmyr Gibbs is probably the consensus too. But then, like, this rookie class from 3 to 10, they're all, like, very interesting profiles that, like, kind of fit the NFL. And all of these guys are going to have some early round draft capital.
It's draft capital.
Fifth round pick.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking across the landscape here. Kenny McIntosh is RB52. I mean, you're getting him. I mean, a lot of these rookies are going so late right now because, one, obviously we don't know landing spots and a lot can change, yada, yada, yada. But, like, if you're building teams right now, I think you've got to be extremely aware of what this running back landscape looks like. And, you're going to have some really bad swings and misses on some of these, like, speculative rookies, but I think that's where a lot of the value is, and I think that's more to the point why wide receivers and quarterbacks are going so early.
And also I think you said we've become good at identifying which wide receivers are good. We've become good at identifying which teams are good. So one of the things I noticed just on the surface level when I was going through leaderboards from last year, 10 of the 19 top scoring wide receivers came from 5 teams. So there were 5 teams that put 2 wide receivers in the top 19 in scoring. And I mean, and you pretty much could guess all of them off the top of your head. Philadelphia had 2, Cincinnati had 2, Miami had 2, Tampa Bay had 2,
Yep.
Seattle had 2.
Yep.
And Seattle's guys were underrated because of nobody really projected that Geno Smith would be good. But that was an edge last year for people. Devontae Smith, Tyler Lockett were huge league winners. Those guys are going a lot earlier this year.
Tyler Lockett isn't. He's still too cheap, man.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Perennially underrated Tyler Lockett. Now, he was available in like the 8th round last year. He is going earlier than that this year. But nobody wants to draft Tyler Lockett. I do wonder if there's still something to be exploited there. Like, yeah, Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are going early, and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are rightfully going early. But is there still something to exploit there? I'm wondering, Drake. But that's neither here nor there. But if you look at Underdog ADP right now, I'm looking at about a week old ADP. Both Miami receivers, both Philadelphia receivers, both Cincinnati receivers are all going in the first 2 rounds of drafts. I have to imagine that's the first time that's like ever happened in fantasy football history.
Yeah, it goes back to my point. We want these teams like the Eagles that were top. They're going to be top 5, top 8 at least in scoring offense again. I mean, I think anything less than 5th would be a miss in projection for the Eagles. Same thing with the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals finally unleashed Burrow and became one of the most pass-heavy teams in terms of pass rate over expectation this past couple of years. Yeah, man. I mean, I think the market's just getting a lot sharper. I'll throw it to you guys. One guy I've really struggled with ranking right now is Breece Hall. You can make any upside argument you want, right? I mean, the dude he was averaging 100 yards from scrimmage right out of the, per game out of the gates. Coming off the ACL, backloaded late round running back group. But I mean, Hall just has so much upside. He is very, very tough to rank right now.
His ADP right now in Underdog 25. So you're getting him at the back end of the second round, beginning of that 3rd round turn. I have a tough time right there because I think you're seeing guys in that situation who they took a wide receiver early. They're swinging for upside. Again, this is a season-long contest. You're not really worried about having Breece Hall maybe for the 1st or 2nd weeks, and you're hoping by the end of the year he's clicking with whatever quarterback they have in there. But is that more of a pick of necessity from someone who's kind of also thinking, I got to get a running back right here, and Breece Hall maybe be the best name on the board, or does that injury still bother you? Because how many guys do we really see come back from these injuries and they're that good the next year? Like it's not that often. I mean, you can almost drop these guys down a tier. I was reading something on Twitter this week just about that, where are we overrating Breece Hall because of what we saw and not what we're going to see after this injury?
I mean, I think it's fair. I also think that there is an understanding that these injuries are different. Like Javonte Williams is buried in ADP right now, and there's been conflicting reports about Javonte Williams this offseason that, he's not going to be ready, and then they said, he will be ready, same as J.K. Dobbins last offseason. And I have to point out the fact that Dr. Edwin Porras said at the time, Williams' injury is a lot more like J.K. Dobbins, while Breece Hall is more of a traditional ACL. Edwin, in talking to Edwin, he said he's going to draft Breece Hall. I wonder if he's going to be drafting Breece Hall if he knows he's a 2nd round pick, though. I wonder if Edwin was looking at that as like, he's going to be a 4th or 5th round pick. I'm going to draft him. And I also think part of the thing that's playing into this is people anticipate the Jets' offense is going to be way better. Whether they get Aaron Rodgers, whether they get Derek Carr, whether they get Jimmy Garoppolo, that offense is going to be way better than it was last year. So I think that's playing into it as well. I have them right currently at 27 overall. Again, don't feel great about that. The running back I have right behind him is Dalvin Cook, who also is injured and had some surgery this offseason. The running back I have right in front of him is Nick Chubb, and I feel pretty good about having Nick Chubb in front of him because Kareem Hunt's moving on. So, that is a really tough spot for me right now.
Yeah, I'm a little lower on Hall just out of the gates than you. He's super tricky because we love the talent coming out, big believer, but even just your normal ACL tear for a running back, the average return, according to Edwin, is about 10 months. And that puts him right up to September. And Brian, to your point, you're right. You can take the zeros in weeks 1 and 2. I mean, it's just it's a tricky projection because you're taking him over bona fide guys like possibly Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. I mean, those guys have been
Yeah.
bona fide league winners with 25, 26 point per game upside. It's tricky. I got to say, Joe, you mentioned Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is one running back that I'm way in on in early ADP. His ADP doesn't make any sense. I haven't
been in on him in 3 years either, but I think I am this year.
I'm definitely in this year. He's going at 28. I've got him at 10 spots ahead of ADP. He's like one of the few guys, like I was saying earlier, where I was like, when I'm looking at backs, it's like, okay, I'm looking from a team down perspective. Like, are they going to score points? The Browns will be better this coming year. I don't think they're going to be a top 10 offense, but they'll be mid-range. We know what Chubb's upside is in terms of what he provides. And they're going to lose Kareem Hunt. Chubb's spike games remind me of like prime Derrick Henry, and I think he's going a little too late. He's like he's like the only running back in the first 3 rounds, and I'm like slightly higher than ADP on him and Najee Harris because I think they have 2 bankable workloads.
What about Aaron Jones? So his ADP right now is 61. Right. And yes, he's going to be splitting time in the backfield again, but Aaron Jones is a really talented running back. Finished last year at RB9 in half-point PPR. You're getting him in the 60s. I mean, are we downgrading that offense that much because Jordan Love could be taking over? I mean, this could be a situation where maybe Aaron Rodgers is still there. Even if Jordan Love is the quarterback, I would anticipate a featured role for Aaron Jones. We could be seeing Alan Lazard move on. And then, good God, I mean, they're throwing us 3 out there at that point.
Yeah, I think that's all somewhat just like projection that Rodgers might not be back. The other thing is, like, Aaron Jones is about to go into his age 29 season. Typically we don't really want to be drafting backs much past 29 now, but I think it's a slight overreaction because, in terms of efficiency, he was still the same guy last year. So
who would you rather have, Aaron Jones or DeAndre Swift, who's going nearly 10 spots ahead of him?
I have Swift ranked ahead simply because, Jamal Williams might not be back. But
I think he will be, by the way.
I think he will be too.
You can't ditch that wiggle, baby. Come on.
Joe, what did Deuce just like hate DeAndre Swift? Like, was that it?
I think he got hurt. And I also think Deuce is adamant about running back rotations. I mean, look at what he did in Philadelphia. And remember, like, there was always like the media always would ask Doug Peterson, oh, why isn't this guy getting carries? And he's like, ask Deuce. He's the one who does the rotations. When the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, the last time they were in the Super Bowl, Jay Ajayi, LeGarrette Blount, Corey Clement were all getting burned, so no, I think Deuce Staley is an adamant running back rotation guy. And I think that's his philosophy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, Swift's just got so much upside. We've seen it in such small spurts, but I was watching him during the season. I haven't done like a film study or anything on him this offseason, but I mean, his vision has just gotten worse. So I don't know if it was a confidence thing with all the injuries or what have you, but I still think he carries a ton of upside. But you're right, Drake. I mean, if Jones is, or if Rodgers is back, Aaron Jones is probably at least 10 spots too low by ADP.
And that raises a point. Did you guys see Matt Schneidman from The Athletic?
What did he say?
Well, he said he was listening to one of Rodgers' podcasts. I forget what podcast he was on, but that guy does more podcasts.
Not this one, so effing.
Not this one yet. We'll have to get him on here. No, hold on. We can get him on here now.
That's why I've got the lights off in the background here.
By the way, how about this? I love this thing, man. You got the clicker here. You turn that on.
Oh, you got to have the clicker for the light.
But we'll get him on here. But Matt Schneidman said he said he's not ruling out Rodgers retiring, but he says, and I think this is an informed guess, he said he thinks if Rodgers plays, it's for the Packers.
It's just so much money.
In which case, if you're drafting Packers right now, these guys are values.
Yeah. I mean,
now, maybe they're values anyway, because maybe Jordan Love's the next star quarterback. We don't know.
I think that's the point. It's so much money. There's no way he's walking away from that and thinking he can get that on the market. No. Yeah. No. It's a very good deal for him. I mean, and he's still a great player, I think. But this guy, man, he's learned one thing from Favre. It's the drama, Jesus.
Hey, well, maybe you guys learn about
well, maybe our listeners out there don't quite have Aaron Rodgers money and they want to save a couple bucks. How about you save $155? Because that's the value we're giving you right now with our deal between Underdog Fantasy and fantasypoints.com. Use our code FANTASYPTS when you sign up for Underdog Fantasy. We're going to double your first time deposit. So you deposit $100 with the code FANTASYPTS. I'm doubling it. Don't tell John Hanson I'm doing it. I'm doubling it right now. I'm giving it an extra $100. With that, you're going to be able to get a standard subscription to fantasypoints.com for just $5. Joe was drunk when he thought this up. I don't know why we're still doing it, but it's unbelievable. You folks have to cash in on this right now. Why would you want to pay full price for anything these days? I can get you a subscription to fantasypoints.com. You can get the Guru. You can get Wes Huber. You can get, our guests right here, Mr. Graham Barfield, Joe Dolan, Tom Brawley's betting advice, Scott Barrett, and all this dank stats. $5 freaking. Just use code FANTASYPTS when you sign up at UnderdogFantasy.com. Deposit, I'm going to match it up to $100, $5 fantasy points. You're in, you're rocking and rolling, and you're kicking some ass in best ball drafts with these rankings today. So let's keep rolling here, Mr. Barfield. And we need to digress to the grudge match you and I had over the summer. Graham and I compete in the Kings Classic draft, and it's a draft that's done at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. We met in the finals, and this is the first time I've been able to see Graham now face to face. He stole the trophy from me, right out from under me, in a championship week where he started Russell Wilson, Taysom Hill, just scrub after scrub after scrub. And on literally the final drive of the NFL fantasy season, beat me with a Pat Freiermuth catch to win the championship. Congratulations, my friend. I look forward to seeing you get the trophy this year. But damn it, I wanted that.
It's funny you say I have scrubs. I mean, I seem to remember having Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill. Those guys scrubs there, buddy? Huh?
Yeah, and then you also had who's the kid from the Saints? The wide receiver.
Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, Rashid Shaheed scored touchdowns.
Yeah.
My God, I'm out there. Yeah, I'm only rolling with Mahomes and Kelsey and A.J. Brown.
Look, I lost Lamar Jackson. I lost Jeff Wilson, who I've been riding. I went 0 RB. It worked. But I was starting some, to steal a word from John, some skanky guys at the end of the season. But, hey, thank you. That was a battle. That Pat Freiermuth catch, I was legit sweating there. That was brutal. He had a drop. Do you remember that? He had a drop, and I thought I had that. I
didn't watch the game. I turned the game off until the final drive. So my question to you is this, to circle back to my team. I drafted Travis Kelce in the first round of that draft. In best ball, you've got Travis Kelce at number 4 overall. He's tight end 1. What's your tight end strategy in something like that? Is it, hey, I can get Kelce, and then I'm going to come back. I got to stack him with Mahomes, maybe in the second round. Or do you just say, I'm going to take a bunch of tight ends later? And if so, who are some guys you like?
Yeah, last year it was like just that. Like, I'm going to take Kelce. I really wasn't into Andrews. I definitely wasn't into Pitts. If I don't take Kelce early, then I'm just going to go with like 3 or 4 late round tight ends. I'll take even 4, especially if you're not spending a lot of draft capital on it. Tight end's always tricky. And everybody's going to say this is the year where we get, finally, we get some tight end depth. We've got some young guys coming in. I wrote it in my article that this year really comes down to what do we get from Greg Dulcich, Chig Okonkwo, Cole Kmet, even Dawson Knox to a certain extent. I'll go a little off the board though, and Joe, you're probably gonna laugh at me, or jar will drop when I say this name. I like Mike Gesicki super late.
Well, honestly, that doesn't. He's entering free agency. Somebody's going to sign him where he fits the offense better. I actually really like that pick.
Yeah. I think Gesicki's a little bit like Gerald Everett last year. He'll go to a better spot with a team that hopefully knows how to use him a little better. I still think, that
might be the spot he goes to, by the way.
Yeah, we've been power fading Gesicki here at Fantasy Points for the last 3 years, just because his role has always been super weird with the Dolphins. Like, they've just never used him as a full-time player. Maybe he can go somewhere and get like an Evan Ingram, Gerald Everett type of 1-year deal. And there's some upside there. I mean, he's free. He's going at 170.5. beyond like just a late round dart guy, I think you have to kind of be excited about Greg Dulcich and what we saw out of him last year. We want some of these guys who can play in big slot roles, be a little bit of a field stretcher. Obviously, Russell Wilson is just a total mystery box at this point. You know, maybe Sean Payton can save him, maybe he can't. But I think Dulcich is set up really well with a strong role. He was running a route at like 75, 80% of the team's dropbacks to finish last year. You know, targets came and went, but the usage was great. We love, obviously, the athletic profile he has. I think Dulcich is definitely somebody I want to be a little overweight on. He's going to get steam too. He's already like 130, 125 overall. Like, I think that's the right pocket for him.
You know, I said last year when I was watching games at the end of the season, now it entirely depends on what do the quarterback situations look like here. What the hell cup is that, by the way? I get that off of my podcast.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Get that off of my podcast. And it's an Atlanta Braves World Series cup. Braves drinking up, by the way. Jelani Woods, Chig Okonkwo are two guys that I'll love to have on every team. The question is, what's the quarterback situation? There hasn't been any Ryan Tannehill buzz, really, because I mean, when Derek Carr, Aaron Rodgers are potentially available, I guess there won't be any Ryan Tannehill buzz. But he's a guy who I'm interested in, Okonkwo. Jelani Woods, who's Indianapolis going to get? And I think Indianapolis is as big a threat as anybody to trade up to the top overall pick. Get a Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, whoever. That's a guy who I think could be utilized. I think there are a lot of appealing late round tight ends, and maybe that is the strategy. Maybe it's to go over for the first 13 rounds of a draft and then go boom, 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 get these high upside later round guys, Drake, because the early tight ends, sans Kelsey last year, did not pay off for you.
You could wait until legitimately 150 picks into the draft and then walk out of there with Okonkwo, Gesicki, Juwan Johnson, a guy I really like, Daniel Bellinger, because no one else is in New York to catch a pass right now.
I mean, they literally have like no receivers right now.
Nope.
Yeah.
Hodgins was an ERFA, so he's back, but they released Galladay.
Yeah.
Slayton's a free agent. You know, I think Richie James is a free agent. Wan'Dale Robinson's coming off an ACL. I mean, who else do they have? And it's a terrible free agent class for the wide receivers. Drake as we'll talk about next week.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting rookie tight end class too. I mean, we saw at the end of last year. Yeah, we saw. I mean, I don't know if Bellinger's any good, but I'm with you. Like, you know, the opportunities there. We saw Bellinger pop. We saw McBride pop for a couple games. I think we're going to start seeing some of these rookie tight ends not break the mold. They're not going to come out and be, you know, Rob Gronkowski or anything right out of the gates, of course. But like, I think we're going to start seeing rookie tight ends produce and be viable late round best ball picks. And for what it's worth, we're seeing Michael Mayer and Luke Musgrave, those guys are getting picked and pushed.
Dalton Kincaid,
Kincaid,
who might be the best of them, but he's not working out at the combine. I think listening back to my buddy Fran Duffy, who does just an incredible NFL draft podcast every week, they went through Dane Brugler's top 100 players, just top 100 big board. I think he had 7 tight ends in his top 100, which seems insane. And but like Fran said, it tracks. Like last year, 19 tight ends got drafted in the NFL draft. So
I think we're seeing a lot more of these like kind of hybrid guys who can play a little bit of everything. They can play inline. You can put them in slot. You can put them out wide. One kind of like linchpin guy. I think if you're wanting to draft early round tight ends, you can always make a case for Mark Andrews. TJ Hawkinson, man, like that's
he was awesome.
He was so good last year. He's one, you know, it's the offense will be the same. Cousins is back. Jefferson's back. We've got some bankability there. He's easy to stack too because Cousins still goes so late. I think if you're drafting early round tight ends this year, I think Hawk paying that kind of premium on Hawk kind of makes some sense.
He's
that pocket where he goes right now in ADP it's not great. I mean, the running backs there are, you know, you gotta kind of like twist your arm and make a case for him. The receivers kind of drop off. I think Hawk at like 40, 45.
He's my 2 right now. I have him ahead of Andrews. And I feel like in a way, you know, how we talked about like those 3 teams that have 2 receivers going in the top 2 rounds, which is insane. I think you can kind of throw Hawkinson into that category.
Yeah.
Like
he's the new Thielen.
I feel like he's kind of replaced Thielen. I call these teams narrow fantasy teams. Cincinnati, Philadelphia, Minnesota. Minnesota's been a narrow fantasy team since Kirk Cousins got into town. And it's great. It's great. Like when I talk about him every week, I'm like, I don't have to talk about this team. You know what to do with these guys. If somebody's hurt, then we'll assess it otherwise. But Hawkinson's my 2. And I definitely think he's going to be a target of mine. But that brings in another question for me, and it builds off of running backs, it builds off of tight ends. This receiver tier, I think there is a precipitous teardrop at receiver in the 3rd round.
Yep, and that's why I'm in on Hawkinson. It's like, okay, Hopkins, Cooper, then you can, you got to take a leap on Chris Godwin. You'd have to take a leap on DJ Moore. You'd have to take a leap on Michael Pittman.
Right.
I think
Christian Watson requires a leap of faith right now,
Absolutely. And that's kind of, when we first started talking tonight, that's another reason why quarterbacks are starting to go earlier. I've got Justin Fields at 41. I've got Lamar at 37. I mean, it's like that pocket. You're right. That's where receiver around that 17, 18 range starts dying. Now, granted,
it's so rough. Lamar was so bad last year, but I think the offense is going to help him. Yes.
Yeah. Your Andrews or Hawkinson over Andrews thing, by the way, is not a hot take. I think that's pretty sharp, honestly, because I was thinking about it too, with Lamar potentially not being back, but Andrews he might get a 28% target share this year. I mean,
I'm the only one on staff who has Hawkinson as my 2, which shocks me because I cannot believe John Hansen didn't do it.
I have him really close in my overall. I have him separated by just a couple.
I mean, I have him separated by 9 spots or something like that overall, Drake.
Yeah.
And I want to parlay that off of because right now, Graham was talking, Amari Cooper's boring. I drafted him everywhere because he was so dirt cheap last year, and he's not this year.
Yep.
I still think. Baby. I wonder if DeAndre Hopkins could be I still like DeAndre Hopkins. He still produced last year, but I do wonder if this year there could be the Titans traded for Julio. And Hopkins and all those. I mean, this is what you have to do. But all the content farming sites are going to be who's stopping DeAndre Hopkins in a Patriots uniform? Stuff like that. That they'll make their hot takes. So I think it takes a leap of faith. But I come back to last year, and I know we're skipping around here. And one of my big lessons learned is these dead zone running backs. Everybody knows why Josh Jacobs was a 7th round pick last year. Everybody knows why Miles Sanders was an 8th round pick last year. These guys who ended up winning people leagues. I have to adjust my thinking, Drake. I've got to say to myself, what is the best case scenario for these guys? Especially, and here's the caveat, especially when they're a guy who has proven he can play in the league. And Miles Sanders and Josh Jacobs were 2 guys who had proven, I understood their flaws, but they had proven they can play in the NFL. And they were relatively young as well. And were we just missing on guys like that because we were looking for the hot new thing, we can't miss out on Javonte Williams, who would have, we can't miss out on this guy. And meanwhile, these guys who had proven they can play in the league, and in the case of Sanders, were in an elite offense, just slipped through the cracks. I wonder how many guys like that are going to exist this year.
I can tell you one that I see right off the bat that Graham's got an RB16. It's Dalvin Cook. And Dalvin Cook was a guy last year who people were drafting as, a top 5 running back. And now, he's going to get his shoulder fixed. Hopefully he's okay. Madison's likely out of town. This offense is still going to be really good. They're going to score points. They play indoors. Dalvin Cook can catch the football. You can get him at RB16 in Graham's rankings. I mean, I'm in for that. Why can't Dalvin Cook be a top 5 running back this year?
Yeah, I think there's some risk that the Vikings, because like you said, Madison probably won't be back. I think there's some risk the Vikings get a legit 2 for him, because I think we're at a point now. I mean, Dalvin still was very effective last year, but I'm not sure he can maintain this massive workload and still be effective. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what the Vikings do, because I think there's some real risk Vikings get some legit help for their back.
Isn't this the conversation we had about Josh Jacobs last year? And that, that's why it's like everyone's just gonna be like, maybe this guy's done.
Dalvin's 28 though. I mean, Josh Jacobs is still young. I'm with you, Joe. I mean, like, I'm kicking myself for Josh Jacobs because I have always loved him, always thought he was a baller, just never had like a huge role. They always like tried to like shoehorn him into like not giving him like goal line carries too. Like, finally got the big role. I think if you look across ADP last year though, like, was Miles Sanders really a league winner? Like, he had a couple big spike games for sure, but like I don't think he was a league winner. I think Josh Jacobs certainly was.
Yeah, well, Jacobs led the league in rushing, but Sanders had some big games, and I don't think anybody regretted drafting Miles Sanders, and he didn't catch passes either. But Miles Sanders right now is like what, a 9th, 10th round pick. What's his ADP? It's here's the thing about Miles Sanders that's interesting to me. By the way, his ADP is 89.3. He's RB 27. He was RB 15 in total scoring last year, so that's a pretty significant dip. He is a free agent, but what are the chances? And I don't think this is that hot a take at all. What if Miles Sanders is out there looking for 3 for 35 or something like that? He doesn't get it, and Howie Roseman's like, "Hey, we didn't extend Jalen Hurts yet, or we did, but his cap hit doesn't get bigger for another 2 seasons." Why don't you come back here on a 1-year deal? We'll pay you a lot of money, and we run it back and try to get back to the Super Bowl. Like, I think that's within the realm of outcomes for Miles Sanders in this next couple weeks. And maybe there's a buying opportunity here for some of these free agent running backs who you expect, oh, I'm not drafting him there because he might go somewhere else. Well, what if he doesn't? What if Josh Jacobs doesn't go somewhere else? Like there could be some real buying opportunities here.
Yeah. I mean, Jacobs, in terms of ADP, you're not really getting too much of a discount.
No, you're not.
I was going to ask you what your read was on Eagles backs, because like if Sanders isn't back and they give Gainwell like a bigger role like they did throughout the playoffs, like Gainwell is a smash pick at like.
No, yeah, and I loved Gainwell last year, and like the thing about Gainwell was he was a miss for me, but like at the end of the year he at least showed why. Yeah. I'm like Derek Gunn, who's covered the Eagles and he is plugged in, says the Eagles love him and they think he can be the lead back. Watching him at the end of the year, I think his role can be bigger than it was. I'm not sure he's a lead back. I really don't. So I do think there is a spot. By the way, Boston Scott's a free agent too. So the Eagles need to add to that running back room, and they're going to. Yeah. I don't think they're going to go pay Saquon Barkley. I mean, although, God, where would he go for fantasy if the Eagles signed him? Oh, my Lanta. But, like, that's why I think Miles Sanders, the Eagles have half their defensive starters are free agents. Like, if Miles Sanders they're able to get him back on a 1-year reasonable deal, I think they do that. So I think that, because I'm holding myself to this, by the way. There have been mock drafts that have the Eagles taking Bijan Robinson at 10th overall.
That'll never happen.
I tweeted it. I am holding myself to this. I am getting drunk and jumping off of my roof if Howie Roseman spends a top 10 pick on a running back. Now, I'm not saying they might not do it at 30. I still don't think they will, but they did draft Miles Sanders in the 2nd round, so it's not that outrageous. No way they do it at 10. There's not a chance in hell they do it at 10, and I will get drunk and jump off my roof if they do. But that calls back to why I think Miles Sanders at this spot, I mean, I'm not going to be excited about him if he really lands on a mediocre team that just pays him the most money. I'm not going to be excited about him. But I think where he's getting drafted right now, Drake and Graham, just on the chance that the scenario I'm talking about comes true, that's a pretty easy pick for me if I'm drafted in the next couple weeks.
One guy that I'm looking at too is, what do you think of James Cook? Devin Singletary is a free agent. He didn't, as the season went on, he got better. He scored some touchdowns at the end of the year in the playoffs. I mean, he's a guy who they drafted, I believe, in the 2nd round. They want big things out of James Cook. They were in on McCaffrey, and they wanted someone who can come in and catch the passes. Isn't that what James Cook is? And then they go out and trade for Naheem Hines. But could this be a year where maybe we're sleeping a little on James Cook, and he could be a bigger role in Buffalo than we have?
He's a huge part of that mix that I like. Miles Sanders being a part of it too. I mean, Sanders' ADP is basically the exact same as it was last year. The thing with Cook is, like, I don't know if it's anything to do with him. This Bills run game, like, I don't know if it's a structural scheme thing. Like, I'm not sure if they have the right offensive line, the right starting five, but like this team, like every year we're like, oh, this is the year they're going to run it a little better. And then they never do, like
The offensive
I
line
think James Cook
good,
is
right?
by far the most talented guy they've had back there. But I mean,
they play a soft brand of football. They say, Josh Allen, go be Superman every play.
Yeah.
Well, it was so apparent, and that's why they lost in the playoffs. It's like they just don't have a piece. If everything's not clicking and Allen's not hitting digs on back shoulders and making crazy shit happen, like they don't have a run game to go to at any point that they can consistently rely on. So the Bills, to me, have got to change something structurally or with their offensive line for me to really be like, okay, I'm in on a Bills back big time. But he's certainly got the upside.
By the way, though, but here's the thing. I don't care if they play. So I don't care if nothing changes with the Buffalo Bills. I'm hoping it does. His ADP is currently 91.
Yeah,
that is a smash pick for me. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't care if I'm wrong.
We say that, and then you're like, you made a good comment earlier. It's like, okay, what's his upside? James Cook, what's his upside? Josh Allen's still the goal line back. They still might draft. They might get another guy to rotate with him.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean. I like James Cook's talent. I was saying, mid-season, the guy looks great, but, I just don't know if the role will be there.
Hold on. Who's the Eagles' goal line back?
Jalen. Yeah.
Miles Sanders scored 11 touchdowns this year.
Yeah.
Even though Jalen Hurts, even though they had the most unstoppable play in the NFL at the goal line. So, there's still some equity to be had there on an offense that scores touchdowns.
Yeah, Bills are a lot more pass heavy. That's a good point. Yeah.
Oh, but and here's the other counter to one of the points I made earlier. All these rules that I'm kind of like these lessons that I've learned, get the second receiver from a really good team. Get the running back from a really good team. The Bills kind of broke those rules last year. We were drafting Gabe Davis like he could be a top 20 receiver, and it just didn't work out for him. But so you have to understand, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a dead zone running back who it was so easy to talk yourself into. But what was the difference? Well, he's never really proven it the way a guy like Josh Jacobs or Miles Sanders had proven it, so there are some things that you have to separate, and you're not going to bat 100 on these things. And I'll probably formulate more hard and fast takes as the offseason goes on. And once I start doing more drafts, it doesn't mean you're going to bat 100, but I'm trying to wonder if there are some trends here that we can exploit.
Well, I think that's another, if you go 2 receivers in your first 3 picks, you could legit take a shotgun to these guys after an ADP of 75, 80, draft 6 of them. And I mean, you might have 1 or 2 where you're looking at it, it's like, okay, I took an L on that, but like there is some gigantic upside, like we were saying with these rookies, and especially with, even somebody like Deontay Foreman and Damien Harris. I mean, those guys have 100-yard double dong upside, still in their profile. So yeah, it's a really interesting. This is, I think last year was like almost kind of a boring year for ADP. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like this running, there are a lot of running backs you can talk yourself into in the late rounds.
I can't wait to dive into these drafts, and the article over at fantasypoints.com is free. We've linked it in the show notes on YouTube and on the podcast platforms. You can read Graham's rankings here. And what we're going to have to do, guys, is come back in. Maybe the 3 of us do a team best ball draft on Underdog. We talk through the picks, talk through the values and all that fun stuff we see. We got a lot to go through.
We'll do it on my account, and then when we win, I'm not splitting the money. How's that? Now that would be the biggest dick move of all time, by the way. I would never do that.
Hey, but if you are going to do that, sign up at Underdog, use code FANTASYPTS. We're going to double your first time deposit up to $100 and get you a $5. That's right, $5
Foot long?
Foot long. No, just kidding. $5 subscription to fantasypoints.com. The best deal in the business. Mr. Barfield.
Way better than a Subway sandwich, by the way.
Yes. Oh, God, yeah. Oh.
So
comes with a dramatically less chance of diarrhea.
Yeah.
Follow Graham on Twitter at Graham Barfield. Joe is at FG_Dolan. I am, of course, at Drake Fantasy. Graham, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us here in the 2 Point Stance. We appreciate it, man.
Of course, yeah. First show of the year. Hopefully it's first of many. So looking forward to the season, boys.
All right, we're going to get out of here, folks. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you leave us a review and subscribe on the YouTube channel. We're going to get Joe out of here to go play some Mario Party with Waluigi. But until then, keep hanging and banging.
or whatever the hell. No, my buddies and I, we used to play Mario Party like every Sunday night in college, and then now with the Nintendo Switch, you can play it online. Let me tell you, you come up with some 4-letter words when you're playing Mario Party.
Maybe that's what we'll do one week on the show too. We'll do a draft based on like Mario Kart races, and that's
I
You guys gotta have me
would,
back
I would
for
be
that.
down for that. Yeah.
You guys got to have me back for that one.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Enjoy your time out there. And this has been the 2 Point Stance.